Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one that proves kindness never disappears. It only waits for the right moment to return. This is the story of a black waiter, two hungry orphans, and a moment of compassion that echoed across 22 long years. Until a Rolls-Royce stopped in front of a quiet hotel and changed everything. 22 years ago, in a small coastal city where tourists came and went but locals struggled to survive. There was a modest hotel with a ground floor restaurant that smelled of coffee, fried eggs, and old wooden floors. The restaurant wasn't fancy. Chipped plates, slightly crooked chairs, and a bell above the door that rang every time someone walked in. Most people barely noticed the waiter who worked there every day from sunrise to midnight. His name was Samuel. Samuel was a tall black man in his early 30s back then, with tired eyes and a gentle smile that never quite faded no matter how long his shift was. He wore the same white shirt every day, carefully ironed, even though the cuffs were fraying. His pay was small, just enough to cover rent for a tiny room and send a little money to his mother every month. He didn't complain. Life had taught him early that complaining didn't change much, but kindness sometimes did. That particular evening, the restaurant was almost empty. Rain tapped softly against the windows, and the neon sign outside flickered like it was about to give up. Samuel was wiping down a table when the doorbell rang. He looked up and saw two children standing just inside the entrance. They were small, a boy and a girl, maybe 8 and 10 years old. Their clothes were thin and worn, shoes too big and held together with tape. Their hair was messy, and their eyes kept darting around nervously. They didn't sit down. They just stood there, holding hands, as if ready to run at the first sign of trouble. Samuel walked over slowly, lowering himself to their level so he wouldn't scare them. He smiled and asked gently what they wanted. The boy swallowed hard and said they were just looking. The girl's stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Her face flushed red with embarrassment. Samuel understood immediately. He had seen hunger before. He had lived with it. He told them they could sit anywhere they liked. They hesitated, whispering to each other, before choosing a table near the window. Samuel brought them menus, but he knew they weren't going to order. He also knew the manager was in a bad mood that night, already complaining about low sales and wasted food. From the kitchen, Samuel watched the children pretending to read the menus, pointing at pictures they knew they couldn't afford. After a few minutes, the boy raised his hand halfway, then lowered it again. Samuel made a decision. He went into the kitchen and used his own money to pay for 2 plates of food. A full meal, chicken, rice, vegetables, and bread. He added 2 glasses of juice and a small dessert, because he remembered what it felt like to be a child who rarely tasted sweetness. When he placed the plates in front of them, the children froze. The girl's eyes filled with tears. The boy stood up quickly and said they didn't have money. Samuel shook his head and told them it was already taken care of. He told them to eat while it was warm. They ate like they hadn't eaten properly in days. Not messy, but fast, grateful, and careful not to waste a single grain of rice. Samuel stayed nearby, pretending to clean tables, watching quietly. When they finished, the boy looked up at him and asked why he did it. Samuel thought for a moment and said, "Because someone once did it for me." The girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, bent coin, trying to offer it to him. Samuel gently pushed her hand back and told her to keep it. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He wrapped some extra bread and food in napkins and slipped it into a small bag for them to take. Before they left, the boy asked for Samuel's name. Samuel told him. The boy said his name was Daniel, and his sister was Grace. He said they didn't have parents anymore. They were staying wherever they could. Before Samuel could say anything else, the manager shouted from the kitchen, angry about something. The children flinched. Samuel walked them to the door, gave them a final smile, and told them to be safe. As they stepped out into the rain, Daniel turned back and said, "One day, I'll repay you. I promise." Samuel smiled again, but this time, sadly. He had heard promises before. Life didn't usually allow children like that to keep them. The doorbell rang as they left, and the restaurant fell quiet again. Samuel never saw them after that night. Years passed. The hotel changed owners. The restaurant got new chairs, then new paint. Samuel kept working. He became the head waiter, then the night supervisor. His hair turned gray at the edges. His back hurt more than it used to. He never married. Life happened, and time moved forward whether he was ready or not. Sometimes, when the restaurant was quiet, he thought about the 2 children. He wondered if they survived, if they found a home, if life had been kinder to them than it had been to so many others. 22 years later, Samuel was no longer a waiter. The hotel kept him on as a front desk attendant, out of respect for his loyalty. He liked the quieter pace. He greeted guests, carried small bags, and answered questions with the same calm smile he'd always had. One late afternoon, a deep engine sound rolled through the street outside the hotel. Samuel barely noticed at first. Expensive cars passed by all the time, especially during tourist season. Then the sound stopped directly in front of the entrance. People in the lobby turned to look. Samuel glanced up through the glass doors and froze. Parked perfectly at the curb was a black Rolls-Royce, polished so brightly it reflected the sky. It looked completely out of place in front of the modest hotel. The engine purred softly, powerful, and controlled. The driver stepped out first, wearing a sharp suit. Then he walked around and opened the rear door. A man stepped out. He was tall, confident, and well-dressed. His shoes were spotless. His watch alone probably cost more than the hotel's monthly revenue. He looked around slowly. Then his eyes locked onto Samuel. The man smiled. Samuel felt a strange tightening in his chest as the man walked toward him. Every step felt heavy, like something important was about to happen, though Samuel didn't know why. The man stopped a few feet away and said, "Hello, Samuel." Samuel stared at him. No one outside the hotel staff knew his name. His heart started beating faster. The man laughed softly and said, "You probably don't recognize me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a bent, old coin. Samuel's breath caught. The man continued, his voice thick with emotion. 22 years ago, you fed 2 hungry children when you didn't have to. You paid with your own money. You treated us like we mattered. Samuel's eyes filled with tears as the memory crashed back in full color. "Daniel," he whispered. The man nodded. "And my sister Grace is waiting in the car." As if on cue, the other rear door opened, and a woman stepped out. Elegant, smiling, eyes shining with tears. She walked over and hugged Samuel tightly, as if he were family. People in the lobby stood frozen, watching in silence. Daniel explained everything. How after that night, someone from a local shelter had found them. How they were taken in, educated, supported. How he never forgot Samuel's face, his name, or his kindness. How that single meal taught him that the world could still be good, even when it felt cruel. Daniel went on to build a successful business. Grace became a doctor. They searched for Samuel for years, coming back to the city again and again until they finally found him. Daniel looked at the hotel, then back at Samuel, and said, "We're here to keep a promise." He handed Samuel a set of keys. Not just car keys, hotel keys. Daniel explained that he had purchased the hotel and renovated it quietly over the past year. He said it was now fully paid for, and it belonged to Samuel. Samuel couldn't speak. His knees nearly gave out. Grace held his arm as tears streamed freely down his face. Daniel added softly, "This isn't charity. This is gratitude." The Rolls-Royce sat gleaming outside, but it wasn't the car that mattered. It was the reminder that one small act of kindness, done without expectation, can ripple through decades. Samuel looked at the siblings, then at the hotel he had given most of his life to, and finally, up at the sky. He whispered a quiet thank you, not just for the gift, but for the proof that kindness truly comes back, sometimes in ways we could never imagine. And that's the story. If this touched your heart, remember this: every small good deed matters, even when no one is watching, because somewhere, someday, it might just come back to you when you least expect it.